Somewhere along Interstate 10, a steel pole holds a sheet of vinyl 30 feet in the air. It shows a lawyer's phone number. That single sign collects around $3,150 every 4 weeks, according to Business.com's 2025 figures. Nobody lives there. Nobody calls a plumber at midnight. The vinyl does not clog a drain or break a lease. A house down the road rents for less and asks for far more. One of these assets pays quietly. The other one texts you on a Sunday. Here's what almost nobody tells you about the thing bolted above the traffic. The billboard is not selling ads. It is renting the one thing they stopped making. So why does a slab of vinyl out-earn a 3-bedroom house? Think about that for a second. The house needs a roof, a furnace, and a tenant who pays. The billboard needs a view of the road. You have probably driven past 10,000 of them. You never wondered who owns the pole. That blind spot is the whole point. The people who own these structures like being ignored. They collect rent from Coca-Cola and the local injury attorney, and they almost never explain how. Meanwhile, you were told rentals are the path. Buy a duplex, find tenants, fix the water heater. Wait, that path works. It also comes with 2 a.m. phone calls and a cap rate near 7.3% per Arbor's late 2025 data. The billboard owner sleeps through the night. The gap between those two lives is wider than the sign is tall. Over the next few minutes, you will see the whole machine. First, the plain economics of a single board and what it actually earns. Then, the part that matters more than the sign, the land under it, and the permit that lets it stand. Finally, the quiet moves the professionals make, the ones that turn one pole into a portfolio. By the end, one number will flip everything you assume about digital screens. Let's be honest, it surprised me too. Start with the sign by itself. No tricks. A standard static billboard earns somewhere between $750 and $3,000 a month, according to alternative asset research site alts.co in 2024. Think of it as a parking space that rents itself to a different car every month. The vinyl does not care who buys it. A law firm this quarter, a casino the next. Here's the quiet part. The board has no kitchen to remodel and no tenant to evict. Its worst maintenance is a new sheet of vinyl every few weeks. That is the floor of the business. The ceiling is where it gets strange. Swap the vinyl for a screen, and the math changes shape. A digital billboard rents for roughly $1,200 to $15,000 and up each month, again per alts.co. The trick is that one screen holds several advertisers at once. Picture a taxi that carries 8 passengers on the same trip and charges each of them full fare. A static board sells one seat. A digital board sells the rotation. 6 or 8 brands share the same steel, and each pays for its slice of the loop. Let's be honest, that is a better business than most storefronts on the street below. But the screen is not cheap to hang, which is the next problem. Now push to the very top of the market. In a major metro, a single premium board can clear $50,000 a month or more per Business.com in 2025. Those are the spectaculars, the giant faces over Times Square, and the Sunset Strip. One structure earns what a small apartment building collects in rent from a single sheet of light. The catch is that almost nobody can build a new one, which is exactly why the old ones are worth a small fortune. Hold that thought because scarcity turns out to be the real story here. There is one more thing the rental never gives you. The billboard has no tenant, only advertisers. An advertiser who stops paying just loses the space. There is no eviction, no court date, no security deposit to argue over. The screen goes dark for a week and then sells again. Compare that to a rental where removing one bad tenant can take months and a lawyer. The board's worst customer is simply replaced by the next campaign. That single difference changes how you sleep at night. And it only gets better once you look at who supplies the demand. How does anyone price a slab of vinyl in the first place? By eyeballs, counted in thousands. Advertisers pay a CPM, a cost per 1,000 views, of roughly $6 to $10 on ordinary roads and $15 to $25 in premium zones like Times Square, per Business.com's 2025 breakdown. A busier road is simply worth more, the way a store on Main Street beats one in an alley. The board does not work harder in traffic. It just gets seen more and charges for it. That is the cleanest rent in all of real estate. You sell the same view over and over to whoever wants the road's attention next. And the cost to build that view splits into two very different numbers. A new digital billboard can cost $100,000 to $500,000 to build, and premium ones run past $750,000, according to sign manufacturer Megasign in 2025. A plain static structure is far humbler, maybe $20,000 to $30,000 in metal per alts.co. So the screen is really a small building you bolt to a pole. Here's what almost nobody tells you. Once it is up, a well-placed board runs at a 40 to 50% operating margin. Again, alts.co's 2024 figure. That is not a retail margin. That is closer to a toll booth. And a toll booth always has a payback clock ticking behind it. The screen pays itself back in about 3 to 5 years when it sits in the right spot, Megasign estimates. After that, the electricity bill runs around $100 to $250 a month, and the software is a few $100s a year. Compare that to a rental house, where the furnace, the roof, and the tenant all want money forever. The billboard's costs actually shrink as it ages. Think of a musician who records one song and gets paid every time it plays. The board is the song, the road is the radio station, and you do not even own the most valuable part of it yet. One honest note on that rent before we go further. The headline figure is gross, and the landowner under the pole takes a real cut before you keep a dime. A board grossing $1,000 a month can net noticeably less once the ground lease is paid. That still beats most things you can buy for the price of the steel, but it is why owners obsess over the lease terms, not just the ad rate. The dirt underneath quietly decides how much of the rent you actually keep. Remember that, because it points straight at the next secret. Here is where the rental comparison quietly falls apart. Most billboard operators do not own the ground the pole stands on. They lease it. The landowner typically collects 15 to 20% of the board's net revenue, and up to about 50% in hungry markets like Los Angeles, according to Acumen returns. So a farmer with a corner near the highway gets a check for doing nothing. His cows keep grazing. The steel above them prints money for someone else. Think about that for a second. The dirt did not change. Someone just noticed it faced the right direction. But the land is not even the scarce thing here. The permit is. In 1965, Congress passed the Highway Beautification Act. It restricted billboards within 1,660 feet of interstate and federal highways. Then it went further. After January 1st, 1987, effectively no new signs could go up in most commercial corridors, only replacements, per the law's own record. Picture a city that stopped issuing taxi medallions but let the old cabs keep driving. The medallion becomes worth more than the car. A billboard permit works the exact same way. You are not really buying steel. You are buying a legal. Right the government stopped handing out. And the old rights came with a quiet bonus clause. Signs that predate the rules are grandfathered in. They can stand for their normal life, and if the government wants one gone, it usually owes the owner just compensation, meaning real cash. Back in 1966, the national inventory counted roughly 1.1 million signs, most of them non-conforming according to the public record of the Act. Many of those slots can never be recreated. It is like owning a house in a neighborhood where new construction was banned forever. Scarcity does the heavy lifting. The board earns the rent, but the permit earns the permanence. And permanence, it turns out, has an upgrade path. So how do you get one if the government stopped issuing them? You buy the right from someone who already holds it. Permits and sign rights change hands like deeds, sometimes bundled with the land, sometimes on their own. This is the part outsiders miss completely. You are not applying for anything. You are purchasing a slice of a fixed, shrinking pool. Every year, a few more towns tighten their rules, and the existing rights get a little scarcer. Time quietly works for the owner and against the newcomer. That math is why patience beats hustle in this corner of real estate. Here is the move that quietly mints money. Take an old static permit in a good location, and, where the local rules allow, convert the face to digital. The steel barely changes. The earnings multiply, because one screen now sells 6 slots instead of 1. You did not find new land. You did not win a new permit. You upgraded a right you already held. It's not one thing. It is a grandfathered permit, a fixed location, and a screen, stacked on top of each other. That stack is what the big companies are actually buying, which raises the obvious question of who the big companies even are. There is a spatial monopoly hiding in the spacing rules, too. Because signs must sit a set distance apart along a highway, each permitted spot effectively owns its stretch of road. A competitor cannot just plant a taller board right beside yours. The law hands you a little exclusive zone of attention. It is like being the only toll gate on a bridge with no other crossing for miles. Every driver has to pass you. Advertisers know it, and they pay for it. That built-in exclusivity is worth more than any single month of rent. Step back and look at the whole board first. U.S. out-of-home advertising set a record in 2024 at $9.1 billion, up 4.5% according to the Outdoor Advertising Association. Then 2025 broke it again at $9.46 billion. The industry has now grown for 19 straight quarters. Think about that for a second. Streaming was supposed to kill the billboard, and the billboard just kept posting record years. You cannot skip a road the way you skip an ad. That durability is exactly why the big operators keep buying. So who are they? 3 companies control roughly 60% of the U.S. billboard market: Clear Channel Outdoor, Lamar, and Outfront Media, per alts.co. Look at Lamar alone. It ran more than 360,000 displays across the US and Canada in 2025 and pulled $2.21 billion in net revenue that year, with $362.9 million in net income from its own 2024 report. Its market value sits near $16.5 billion this July. That is not a sign company. That is a landlord with 360,000 tenants who never call. And only about 5,000 of those displays are digital, which will matter in a minute. First, watch how they turn boards into more boards. Lamar is not alone at the top. Outfront Media pulled in about $1.83 billion of revenue in 2024 from its own annual report. Together with Clear Channel Outdoor, these firms own the best permitted faces in nearly every major market. They did not get there by building. They got there by buying grandfathered permits from smaller owners, one portfolio at a time. Every independent board is a future acquisition to them. That is the exit most small owners quietly count on, which is why the way they value a board matters so much. Owning several boards also unlocks something one board never can: a network. Sell 100 faces as a single package, and a national brand can blanket a city in a week. That bundle is worth more than the sum of the single rents because you are now selling reach, not steel. A lone board sells space, a network sells a campaign. This is why operators keep stitching poles together instead of stopping at one. The 10th board makes the first 9 more valuable. And that compounding is the part the get-rich pitches never quite explain. Billboards tend to sell for about 10 times their annual gross revenue, or roughly 5 times net profit, according to alts.co. That predictable price is the secret engine. A board with steady rent is easy for a bank to value and easy to borrow against. So the pros buy a board, let it season a year, then refinance, and pull the cash back out. Think of a chess player who takes one piece and immediately uses it to threaten the next. The rent covers the loan buys the next permit. Nobody mails a rent check to their own pocket and simply stops there. The machine is designed to feed itself, and the smartest owners close one more loop on top. Put the 2 returns side by side and the gap gets almost rude. A single-family rental returned a 7.3% cap rate in late 2025 per Arbor. A well-run board's operating margin sits at 40 to 50%, and one refurbished board can return its cost several times over in a single year. Now, those headline numbers hide real work and real risk, and we will get to that shortly. But even cut in half, the billboard math quietly embarrasses the duplex. The difference is not luck. It is a permit doing what scarce paper always does. The quietest move of all is to buy the ground under your own board. Remember the landowner who collected 15 to 50% of the take. The professional eventually becomes that landowner. Now the rent no longer leaks out to a third party. You hold the permit, the structure, and the dirt, 3 separate assets stacked in one spot. It is like owning the theater, the movie, and the popcorn stand at the same time. Each one pays you separately. Here's what almost nobody tells you. The land alone often keeps rising in value while the board pays the mortgage on it. You get paid to wait. And a man named Frank Rolfe built a whole career on exactly this idea. Frank Rolfe, who now teaches the trade, describes buying sign rights and paying the landowner 25% of revenue with a $500 monthly floor. In one deal, he spent about $5,000 refurbishing a tired board, then rented all 3 faces for roughly $2,500 a month. That is around $20,000 of net rent a year on a $5,000 fix, a return that quietly laughs at any duplex. His empire of corners and cows was built one grandfathered pole at a time. He did not chase the newest, shiniest screen on the strip. He chased the boring, permitted, well-placed steel that nobody else bothered to look up at. Which brings us straight to the part the brochures always skip. Let's be honest, this is not free money falling from a pole. The permit that makes billboards valuable also makes them fragile. Cities can rewrite zoning overnight. Some, like Sao Paulo years ago and a handful of US towns, have banned new billboards outright or forced old ones down. When a lease under your board expires, the landowner can raise the rent hard because you cannot simply move a permitted structure across the street. Vacancy is real too. A board on a dying road earns nothing, and you still owe the ground rent every month. Billboard Insider warned back in 2021 that these assets are not truly passive. Permits and leases do not renew themselves. Somebody has to sell the ad space, renegotiate the dirt, and fight the occasional zoning board. The steel is patient. The paperwork is not. Buy the wrong location or the wrong permit terms, and the same scarcity that protects a good board will trap you on a bad one. The math only works while the road keeps carrying eyes. Now, the number that flips the whole story. Only about 2.8% of the roughly 340,000 billboards in the United States are digital, according to alt.co, a tiny sliver of screens. Yet digital already produces about 36% of all out-of-home revenue, per the Outdoor Advertising Association's 2025 figures, inside a U.S. market that hit a record $9.46 billion. Think about that for a second. Less than 3% of the boards earn more than a third of the money. That is the entire game in one statistic. The value was never in owning many things. It was in owning the few right things and stacking rights on top of them. Here is the meta principle, and it reaches far past billboards. Own the land and the structure that pays you small, repeated amounts, then feed that cash straight into the next one. Not the flashy thing. The permitted thing on the corner the road already turns past. A billboard beats a rental for one plain reason. It is a right the government stopped issuing, sitting on land you can also own, paid for by strangers who never knock on your door. Wealth is quiet ownership of things people cannot easily rebuild. The rental asks you to work. The right asks only that you hold it. Once you see that difference, you cannot unsee it in any market you look at. Picture two neighbors. Dana buys a rundown rental, spends her weekends fixing tenants' faucets, and refreshes the countertops every few years chasing a better lease. Marcus buys one tired billboard on a corner nobody noticed, upgrades the permit, then buys the land beneath it and waits. Dana works harder every single year. Marcus works hardest in year 1, then mostly watches the road. 10 years on, Dana owns a nicer house that still calls her at midnight. Marcus owns a right that cannot be reissued, on dirt that keeps rising, paid for by a sheet of vinyl 30 feet in the air. Same decade, same money at the start. Two completely different lives. The lawyer's phone number is still up there on Interstate 10, quietly collecting its $4,000 a month. Somebody owns that pole. It might as well be the patient one. If this changed how you see the road, subscribe. Next week, the parking lot that quietly out-earns an apartment. Go look up.